Starseed of Gaia, you are receiving this because your system is ready. Your vessel is undergoing a precise cellular recalibration in this moment, not by force, but by alignment. I am Anya, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light. What follows is a direct transmission from the Arcturian Council, delivered without distortion. Before we go deeper, let me say this clearly. What you've been feeling is not a failure of your mind or body. From here, the Arcturian frequency can be received without resistance. Starseed. There is a reason your body has been reacting before your mind can explain it. The corridor you're moving through is not just busy news, not just shifting politics, not just louder skies. It is a compression of timelines. It is a threshold where multiple truth streams, cosmic, institutional, technological, and psychological, are beginning to spill into the same visible space. And that convergence is what makes this moment feel intense, because your nervous system is being asked to hold a larger reality without running back to the old safe story. You were trained to believe truth arrives in one official sentence, in one press conference, in one approved disclosure. But the Arcturians transmit a different understanding. Disclosure is not a single announcement. Disclosure is a frequency event. When the collective field becomes coherent enough, truth stops asking permission. It starts appearing through many channels at once: cultural archetypes, private innovation, legal ruptures, data leaks, whistleblowers, sky phenomena, and the sudden collapse of social taboos. And here is the promise within the tension. You are not here to be overwhelmed by the acceleration. You are here to stabilize it. You are here to become a living interface between the old world's denial and the new world's remembrance. Because once the impossible becomes speakable, it becomes actionable. The myth becomes matter. The hidden becomes discussable. The unthinkable becomes a doorway. Now listen closely, because what happens next depends on how you hold your inner seat. The first thing the Arcturians want you to understand is that revelation is not linear. It arrives like weather systems. Pressure builds unseen, then suddenly breaks. For years, many of you have carried an inner knowing that humanity was living under an engineered smallness, trained to look down at survival, distraction, and conflict, instead of looking up into the living cosmos. That smallness was not just cultural. It was energetic, a field condition. And now, that field is changing. As the Arcturians transmit, a civilization can only receive truths that its nervous system can metabolize. If the collective is saturated in fear, truth will be rejected, weaponized, or worshipped, none of which is mature contact. So the acceleration you're feeling is not random. It's a sign the collective field is reaching a new capacity. Not perfect, not fully coherent, but ready enough that reality can begin pressing through cracks. This is why revelations now come in clusters. A technological leap shows up publicly. A long-buried archive becomes accessible. A taboo topic gains legitimacy. A courtroom release destabilizes a protected narrative. These may look unrelated on the surface, but they share a deeper mechanism. They weaken the old spell, the spell that said, "Power can hide forever." Here is the crucial nuance. Not every claim in an accelerating corridor is true, but the corridor itself is real. When information floods, the field fills with truth, distortion, half-truth, emotional contagion, and deliberate manipulation all at once. This is why your role matters. You are not here to amplify chaos. You are here to become a filter of coherence. Let me show you how the Arcturian mind reads this moment. Imagine your collective story as a sealed chamber. For decades, the chamber has been pressurized with secrecy, compartmentalized programs, protected networks, cultural ridicule, and psychological conditioning. When the pressure becomes too high, the chamber doesn't open politely. It cracks, And once it cracks, it keeps cracking, because the public begins to realize that what they accepted as normal was curated. This is why disclosure accelerates through seemingly non-cosmic events, too. Because the exposure of secrecy methods destabilizes all compartments that rely on those methods. You're watching a societal immune system awaken, and immune systems don't negotiate with infections. They identify, inflame, purge, and rebuild. But this corridor has a higher purpose than scandal. It is training humanity to become truth-capable, to hold complexity without panic, to separate evidence from narrative, to demand accountability without turning into hatred. This is what prepares a species for contact, not the perfect technology, but the mature psyche, and the Arcturians transmit this clearly. Contact without collapse is a skill. You are learning it now in real time. Every time you breathe before reacting, every time you refuse sensationalism, every time you stabilize your emotional field while truth surfaces, your nervous system becomes a prototype for the collective. And there is a cliffhanger hidden here. If disclosure is a frequency event, then the next big revelation will not come only through governments. It will come through whatever channel the field can hold next. And you may already feel which channel is building pressure now. The second transmission is about archetypes, because archetypes are not entertainment. They are collective permission structures. When a public figure speaks in cultural myth language, when they invoke a future where humanity becomes interstellar, it does something to the collective psyche that a technical briefing never could. It makes the future emotionally speakable. Your minds like to reduce space into engineering because engineering feels safe. You can measure it. You can control it. But the Arcturians transmit that what you're watching in the sky narrative is not only technology, it is identity reformatting. When space becomes normalized, launch cadence, reusable systems, prototypes, constant media cycles, the sky becomes psychologically near. Not sacred and distant, not a museum behind locked doors, but a frontier the human family can touch. That changes everything. Because once the collective accepts we are going outward, it becomes less shocking to consider others exist and others have already been here. The most important pivot is this. Humanity as interstellar is not a technological claim. It is an identity claim. And when identity shifts, behavior follows. Children choose careers. Artists encode new dreams. Investors move resources. Institutions adjust their language. Even skeptics relax their grip because the new self-image becomes socially acceptable. As the Arcturians transmit, when a new identity becomes speakable, it becomes energetically actionable. That's why seemingly casual mythic phrases can be catalytic. They bypass the rational guard and speak to the deeper mind that remembers. We were never meant to be caged by one planet's fear. But here is where discernment enters. The Arcturian Council does not want you hypnotized by personalities. Symbols are powerful, but symbols are not the source. The source is a collective readiness wave that has been building for decades, carried quietly by those who were ridiculed for sensing the wider reality. This is also why the old controlled narrative model weakens when capability decentralizes. When one gate holds the story can be slowed and shaped. When the story becomes distributed, through private capacity, global communication, independent observation, citizen science, and cultural normalization, suppression becomes costly. Silence begins to look more incriminating than admission. And the deeper lesson: if humanity wants to make the myth real, it must do more than build machines. It must build ethics, maturity, nervous system coherence, and reverence for life. Technology without heart becomes a shinier conquest. Technology married to awakened consciousness becomes a bridge. Now pause and feel the cliffhanger. If normalization is training the public for a wider cosmology, then ask yourself, why are so many people suddenly looking up again, talking about the sky again, questioning again? What is being seeded into the collective mind right before the next threshold? This is not for everyone. The Ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, is a restricted trilogy created for those who are ready to activate their 5D connection with the Arcturian masters, not in theory, but in real energetic experience. Inside, you'll access 12 powerful portals with precise activation protocols, rituals, and practical techniques designed to awaken your stellar DNA and unlock what has been dormant within you. Amplified intuition, direct communication with spiritual guides, energetic expansion beyond the 3D matrix. Warning: once activated, your perception will not return to the previous state. Limited edition. Access can close at any moment. The link to claim your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. If this message reached you, it's not random. Now we enter a more delicate transmission. In your world, you're witnessing what can be called a paperquake, a destabilizing surge where documents, archives, names, networks, and institutional silences are dragged toward public view. The Arcturians ask you to hold precision here because precision is love. When massive releases hit the collective, the public psyche does what it always does. It begins connecting dots. It cross-references. It searches for patterns beneath patterns. This can create genuine breakthroughs and also distortions. Not every dramatic interpretation is verified. Not every claim circulating online is accurate. But the energetic mechanism is undeniable. Once a society tastes the shock of hidden realities, its tolerance for nothing to see here collapses. This is how disclosure accelerates, not through one perfectly curated revelation, but through cascading exposures that weaken compliance. And even when the subject matter is not cosmic, the exposure of secrecy methods destabilizes all hidden compartments that rely on the same methods. The Arcturians transmit that secrecy is not just content. It is a structure, a method, a technology of control. When the public realizes secrecy protected human harm, it becomes easier to imagine secrecy protected other realities too. Advanced programs, off-ledger funding streams, compartmentalized corridors of research, protected corporate ecosystems, and the long-rumored programs within programs. Here is where many starseeds get pulled into a trap. They turn outrage into identity. Outrage can be a valid response to violation and corruption, but if you live inside it, it becomes a frequency that can be harvested, redirected, and weaponized against your clarity. Your role is different. You are here to become a stabilizing shoreline. You do not share sensational claims as confirmed facts when they are not. You breathe before you repost. You ask for sources. You learn the difference between verified data and interpretive overlay. You notice when a narrative is engineered to hijack your nervous system, because the heart, when awake, is the organ of truth without frenzy. The heart can face horror without collapse. The heart can demand accountability without addiction to hatred. The heart can support the harmed while refusing to feed a story of hopelessness. And this is the Arcturian pivot. A true disclosure wave is not only about exposing darkness, it is about restoring wholeness, dignity, reality, without turning yourself into an instrument of distortion. If this message resonated with you, hit the like button now and tell us in the comments how this echoed in your consciousness. If this message ignited something within you and you feel the call to help carry it to others, you may become a channel member. As a member, you gain access to custom emojis and exclusive members-only videos, and your donation helps us continue building this sacred space. You may also choose to leave your offering as a super thanks. Every seed planted here becomes part of someone else's miracle. Your support is not merely financial, but an act of energetic amplification. All donations are devoted entirely to the maintenance of the channel and the creation of new transmissions and videos. In this corridor, the sky itself becomes a mirror. Many of you are noticing heightened auroral activity, unusual light behavior, structured trains crossing the night, and the subtle feeling that the visual language of your heavens is changing. The Arcturians ask you to hold a balanced lens. Not everything strange is non-human, and not everything labeled ordinary technology is fully understood by those repeating the label. In a transitional era, perception becomes crowded. Your sky becomes populated by human systems, communications networks, observational platforms, prototypes, and also by phenomena that do not fit clean explanations. Discernment is not cynicism. Discernment is not paranoia. Discernment is the ability to remain open without being naive, and skeptical without becoming closed. Here is a practical Arcturian framework you can use when you see something that triggers your nervous system. Regulate first. If your body is panicking, you will interpret everything through threat. Breathe until your chest softens. Observe details, motion pattern, duration, sound or lack of sound, environment, witness corroboration. Separate sensation from story. I felt chills is real. This proves X may not be. Refuse identity attachment. Don't make being right your spiritual home. Make coherence your home. Stay curious. Curiosity keeps the heart open without surrendering your mind. The Arcturians transmit that the collective is being trained to look up again, because looking up is a psychological act. It breaks the trance of smallness. Even the presence of human-made systems in the sky changes the collective sense of isolation. It makes the cosmos feel nearer. And that psychological nearness prepares the mind for the next truth. But also understand, in a disclosure corridor, narratives will compete. Some will be engineered to create fear. Others will be engineered to create worship. Both distort sovereignty. So your assignment is simple, but not easy. Become the person who can hold the unknown without collapsing into certainty or panic. That is what contact-ready consciousness looks like. Are these truths expanding your perspective? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. If the sky is becoming noisier, technologically and energetically, then the next phase of disclosure will depend on how many humans can witness the unknown without turning it into a weapon. Once a collective realizes one protected truth was real, it starts searching for the larger map. That search can become liberation, or a labyrinth. The question is, will you be led by fear or by coherence? Now we enter the heart of the Arcturian teaching. You do not need an institution's permission to remember. This is what we call self-authorized disclosure. The inner unveiling that happens when your frequency becomes coherent enough to receive multidimensional truth. As the Arcturians transmit, contact is governed by resonance. When your field matches a benevolent frequency, closeness becomes natural, not forced, not dramatic, not performative, natural. And this is why your body has been changing. Sleep patterns, emotional purges, sensitivity to noise, sudden waves of fatigue followed by clarity. Your vessel is recalibrating to hold higher coherence. Many of you thought this meant something was wrong. But the Arcturians would say, your system is learning a larger bandwidth. Here is a simple daily practice, 10 minutes, that acts like a consistent beacon. Sit with your spine aligned. Breathe slowly until your chest softens. Bring awareness to the heart center. Imagine a radiant glow expanding with each inhale. On each exhale, release fear from the lower centers into Gaia's transmuting field. Enter stillness. Repeat a simple anchor like I am until thoughts loosen. Visualize crown light opening, violet white, inviting source coherence. Activate the third eye gently, indigo clarity, not strain. Speak a clear intention. I welcome benevolent Arcturian contact in alignment with divine love, sovereignty, and highest good. Receive what comes without demanding proof, a sensation, an image, a phrase, a pulse of knowing. Close with gratitude. The power is not in intensity. The power is in consistency. 10 minutes a day compounds. Like tuning an instrument. The more you tune, the more stable the signal becomes. And the more stable the signal becomes, the less you need external confirmation, because your inner knowing becomes calm, clear, and embodied. But be prepared. Higher frequency often pulls old patterns to the surface. Doubts, skepticism, trauma echoes, fear reflexes. This is not failure. This is integration. The Arcturians transmit that healing is part of contact readiness. If your system still equates unknown with danger, your body will reject the very reality your soul desires. So let your practice be gentle, devoted, and sovereign. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be part of this transformational cosmic journey. If enough individuals become contact-ready inwardly, the collective threshold changes outwardly, which means your private 10 minutes may be participating in a public timeline shift. Now we speak to the surface structure many of you watch: institutions, officials, hearings, cautious language, partial admissions. The Arcturians do not ask you to worship these structures or demonize them. They ask you to read their function. Official disclosure often arrives as a drip because institutions are designed to preserve stability. They fear social shock, economic instability, religious collapse narratives, and mass panic. So they offer fragments, phases, careful framing, not always out of malice, often out of risk management, and sometimes out of self-protection. But here is the shift. As the collective becomes more truth-capable, the drip-feed model becomes less effective. Because the story is no longer held by one gate, it is distributed through global communication, independent researchers, citizen observations, cultural normalization, private capability, whistleblowers whose social cost is dropping. In other words, the field begins forcing the hand of institutions. Silence becomes more damaging than admission. And as that happens, you will see more measured statements, more official vocabulary shifts, more attempts to reframe what was once ridiculed. Yet the Arcturians warn you, do not confuse official language with full truth. You are watching a transition where institutions attempt to remain the narrator of a story they no longer fully control. This is why your inner work matters. Because the deepest disclosure will not be granted as a gift from authority. It will be accepted as a maturity event by the collective. When enough humans hold steadiness, revelations can land without tearing society apart. So when you feel impatient, remember this. The corridor is delicate, and your frequency is part of the stabilizing infrastructure. This is not for everyone. The Ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, is a restricted trilogy created for those who are ready to activate their 5D connection with the Arcturian masters, not in theory, but in real energetic experience. Inside, you'll access 12 powerful portals, with precise activation protocols, rituals, and practical techniques designed to awaken your stellar DNA and unlock what has been dormant within you. Amplified intuition, direct communication with spiritual guides, energetic expansion beyond the 3D matrix. Warning: once activated, your perception will not return to the previous state. Limited edition. Access can close at any moment. The link to claim your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. If this message reached you, it's not random. And here is your cliffhanger. If institutions are adjusting because the field is changing, then the next phase won't be whether disclosure happens, but who stays sovereign while it happens. Now we bring it to the most important point. You are not a spectator. You are part of the ground crew of an interstellar threshold, not because you have to be perfect, but because your soul signed up to hold coherence when the old stories fracture. The Arcturians transmit that disclosure is not primarily about information. It is about nervous system capacity. Humanity is being asked to let go of the identity, small, isolated, managed, and step into cosmic, connected, responsible. And this is where your role becomes precise. You anchor calm when others spiral. You translate the unknown into language the heart can hold. You normalize wonder so fear doesn't dominate the room. You refuse catastrophic storytelling that programs panic. You practice ethics so contact is not framed as conquest. There will be moments where new truths surface and people will reach for extremes, worship or denial, paranoia or mockery. You are here to model a third path, mature wonder, clear-eyed, discerning, compassionate, sovereign. And you must also remember, your inner work is not decorative. It is infrastructure. Your meditations are not a hobby. They are emotional architecture. They create the coherence that allows a civilization to graduate. So when you hear mythic language about humanity going outward, do not become hypnotized by the stage. Listen for the deeper frequency. The collective is being trained to accept a living cosmos. When you see institutions crack under hidden truths, do not drown in outrage. Become a shoreline of clarity. When the sky feels busier, do not rush into certainty. Witness with discernment. Because the true Star Trek becomes real moment is not a ship on a launch pad. It is the day humanity meets the wider family of life without collapsing into fear, standing instead in mature wonder, steady love, and clear remembrance. And here is the final cliffhanger. The most important disclosure may not arrive as a headline. It may arrive as a personal threshold inside you, when you suddenly realize you've been preparing your entire life to recognize a frequency you cannot unknow. If this message impacted your life, leave your like, comment your reflection, and share with others. Each of you is part of this chain of light.